Wow, it's certainly very quiet in here. It's okay to talk until we get started, by all means.
Good evening. On behalf of East Greenwich Township and Mayor Dale Archer, welcome to the 6 o'clock Town Hall meeting. Tonight's meeting is being recorded and will be posted later on social media for anyone that cannot log on. Tonight's rules. The meeting will be 1 hour and 30 minutes long. All right, we obviously are still doing work at the site as we speak. So the meeting is respectfully 1 hour and 30 minutes long. The public session will go until 7:20. We'll have 5 minutes for media in the back to ask questions. And then Mayor Archer will have the remaining 5 minutes for his closing remarks. Any questions on Zoom, please use the chat feature. We do have a panel in the back that will answer all questions that are coming through. If they cannot answer those questions, they will be passed to our moderator, and we on the panel will answer those questions. In person, everyone has an index card as you walked in. Please hand those index cards. We will have a couple of gentlemen walking around collecting those index cards. They will be handed to the moderator, and those questions will be asked directly here and now. For anyone speaking Spanish, we do have a Spanish translator in the crowd. Susanna from Public Health, our WIC program, is here tonight. Thank you for being here and being able to translate for us. If anyone is experiencing any kind of mental health, talking about the incident or dealing with the incident, again, from Gloucester County Health Department, we do have some experts in the back of the building for any kind of issues that you may be having with mental health. And we do have a private room set aside so you guys can speak to those professionals. Again, thank you, and Mayor Archer.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to East Greenwich Township. First and foremost, this meeting tonight is in person as well as on Zoom. So we have multiple individuals that are also tuning in via Zoom. We felt that a town hall forum would be the best place for residents to address their concerns and have their questions answered over the tanker odor release incident here in East Greenwich Township. We understand that this day and age, social media, everyone wants information instantaneously. However, there also is a moral and an ethical responsibility to ensure our message have accurate, concise information and that we do not cause hysterics or fear. The health and safety of our community has always been and will continue to always be our #1 priority. I can assure you this, prompt action was taken and continues to be taken to resolve this matter. Controlling this incident and removing the tanker are the first steps. We will continue to support our residents and disseminate information accordingly. Know that even once this issue is solved, there is still plenty of work to be done, including a debriefing where we will evaluate what we can do even better next time. Let me reiterate that any and all parties who are determined to be responsible for this incident will be held accountable. I want to thank those residents for their patience, cooperation, and most importantly, their understanding. I also, most importantly, would like to thank the emergency response teams who have courageously been working at the scene around the clock and continue to be there today. The command center consists of a large array of local, county, state, and federal agencies, along with law enforcement who are diligently working on this issue. These professionals are the ones who we really want to hear from tonight. So I will now turn it over to our moderator to start the meeting.
All right, thank you, Mayor. At this time, we'll do introductions of the panelists, starting at the left.
Good evening, I'm Bob Van Falsten, I'm with New Jersey DEC, the Emergency Management.
Good evening, my name is Drew McCarty with Specialized Professional Services Incorporated, with a hazmat response contractor that's assisting with the vapor management from the tanker.
Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Scott Malm. I'm a toxicologist with CTEH. we're a toxicology consulting firm that's been doing the air monitoring out around the community and the worksite. Hello, I am Dr. Michael Riley, also toxicologist with CPEH.
Again, my name is Mayor Dale Archer of East Greenwich Township.
Good evening, Jim Philbin, Deputy Mayor, East Greenwich Township. I'm Dave Edmondson, I'm with Transcom USA.
Good evening, Matt Brenner, and I'm the Chief of Police here in East Greenwich Township.
Good evening, Nelson Weiss, representing East Greenwich Fire Department.
Good evening, Jack D'Angelo, Gloucester County Officer of Emergency Management.
All right, at this time, we'll have a presentation by Chief.
Okay, so many of you who are here in the crowd and at home on Zoom, I think first and foremost, it's critical that we're able to go through a timeline or what we call a storybook from the time of the incident on Wednesday to where we're at currently. A lot of you have questions, and rightfully so, here and at home and abroad, and need to kind of have a background of how we received that call, what was the assessment, what was the plan on containment, and where we're at now in the operation. As the mayor alluded to, getting the tanker truck out of East Greenwich Township and ensuring the safety continues for this community and the communities beyond. So I'm going to go through our storybook presentation. I certainly understand if you have questions about some of the things you'll see on the screen. And for those of you at home, you'll see what we're showing here, right here in the courtroom. But I encourage you to save your questions for the end of this presentation, because we will open it up and we will answer some questions for all of you in the crowd and all of you at home that have submitted questions. And again, hopefully some of what we're going to show you now answers some of those that you may be anticipating asking the panel here. And again, I'm not an expert on all fields. I'm presenting this material to you right now, but we've brought the best of the best behind me here that will be able to answer a lot of those very specific questions you may have regarding this incident at the TA Travel Center. So we'll move on. As you see here on this first page, you'll see a map. This map has some data points on it in orange. You may see it in red at home. These data points that you're looking at are the initial call response to the odorous or report of odor coming from the TA truck stop area. So again, to begin and kick things off, the incident that we're referring to and that you're here for tonight and online for occurred on August 10th, 2022 at 3:07 p.m. That is Wednesday. Gloucester County 911 communications began receiving hundreds and hundreds of calls from residents and businesses here in East Greenwich Township and beyond in other counties for a report of a pungent odor or an odor of what they believe was natural gas. In total, over 8,200 calls to 911 were received during this incident, as depicted on the map to the right. Again, those are the data points I referred to. Those numbers include right here in Gloucester County, 3,700 calls to 911. In Camden County, 3,200 calls to 911. And Burlington County, 1,350. So the report of this odor, and again, we'll get into low thresholds of odor, but this odor traveled quite a distance. And again, addressing it right here in East Greenwich Township at the TA Travel Center, there's some reasons why it traveled. Environment has a lot to do with that, but the reason it stayed behind as well has a lot to do with the properties of the actual odor itself. And again, we'll get into some of those details for you. Moving on, Gloucester County Communications then received a 911 call from our travel center at the TA truck stop, which is at 171 Berkeley Road in East Greenwich Township, advising that there was gas vapors coming from a tractor trailer parked in the lot. As you move up here, if you want to move to the next picture. So what you're looking at here is an aerial view of our TA Travel Center. You'll see Berkeley Road and the lines of trucks, the diagonal trucks right there is our secured parking lot at the rear of the truck stop. So many of you that are familiar with the area, there's a front Dunkin' Donuts, there's some commercial area, there's a shop, but in the rear is a secured lot where only truck drivers will stop to fuel up. They'll stop to eat, they'll stop to take a break, maybe spend the night, and there's a fuel hut in the back. So that is the area where the incident occurred and where this tanker vessel was located. At approximately 3:37 p.m., on Wednesday. At the exact location, the odor was identified by an East Greenwich police officer. Additional emergency responders, fire department, emergency medical services, hazardous materials response units, Office of Emergency Management, all began to converge on the location to further assess the situation. So again, we explained to you the immense amount of initial call volume, right? Everybody is responding to this area. We finally get a call, and again, my officers are out on patrol. They're in mobile units. They're going to strip malls. They're going to houses. They're trying to pinpoint and locate the source and origination of this pungent odor being reported to us. The TA truck stop says, we believe it's here. I have an officer that locates the vessel, which is a tanker truck parked in the diagonal area, not far from the fuel hut in the middle of this page here, and identifies the particulars of the truck, the color of the truck, the placard number, describes it as a tanker truck, and relays all of this to our communication center. This is when dispatch begins to send out all of the crews required for this. Hazmat crews, fire departments, Office of Emergency Management, and very soon we start seeing a lot of emergency resources coming in, and we begin to set up an incident command post right on the south side back corner of this secured lot, which would be to the left of your screen there, or the left of the picture. As this was quickly identified as a complex hazmat situation, a unified command system was established, as alluded to. Additional resources were requested. We immediately notified NJ DEP, NJ State Police, Office of Emergency Management, Cherry Hill Hazmat, Camden County Hazmat, Salem County Hazmat, 21st CST, National Guard Air Monitoring. And that's the civil support team from the National Air Guard, and several other local emergency responding agencies. The product within the vessel was soon identified as Lubrizol 1389, which is a product that's used as a fuel additive, releasing byproducts of hydrogen sulfide and methyl mercaptan. And again, after our officers receive an initial call, we're able to locate this truck, and we're able to visually see that there is a gas being released from the rear of the tank of this truck. Moving on here, you'll see hazmat operations continued through the night. We continued hour after hour, continuing to cool the vessel, ensuring area monitoring. As soon as resources got out there, we begin to monitor the immediate area and the areas beyond the immediate area. So if you look at that TA truck stop, and if you remember the way the trucks are parked, that is a complete fenced-in area with a travel center and a restaurant up front. Not only did we monitor for air quality purposes in that immediate area where the vessel was located, but we immediately began monitoring the area beyond that, the businesses beyond that, and the residential communities beyond that as well. Hazmat teams began cooling the vessel, ensuring area monitoring and remediation and mitigation efforts continued. A shelter-in-place advisory went out at about 11:30 that night, August 10th, to East Greenwich, Greenwich, Paulsboro, Mantua, West Deptford, Woodbury, Woodbury Heights, National Park, Westville, Deptford, that there was no imminent danger, but to shelter in place voluntarily. This message went out to about 21,000 residents, and it was lifted at 1:30 a.m. on the 11th. Again, this map depicts the area of notification. So again, we used a reverse 911 system to put out that shelter-in-place advisory to our communities. And again, the bullet point below that, and it may be tough to see on the screen, but the reason for this advisory was due to a larger, more sustained release, and the shelter-in-place advisory was sent out. So while on scene, while continuing to assess, contain, and evaluate the scenario, bring in the resources and experts to evaluate what situation we had, we see another release come from the rear vessel of this tanker truck. And again, that message comes out as an abundance of safety to our community. It was at that time that East Greenwich Township locally, as well as Gloucester County, declared a local state of emergency in unison with this advisory notification. This allows East Greenwich Township locally and Gloucester County to gain access to emergency funds and resources. As we continue on, Ongoing air monitoring, which began on the 10th, on Wednesday, by Gloucester County 21st Civil Support Team is continuing. Again, when I tell you that air monitoring is continuing, that was something that took place immediately upon responding authorities that were able to come out with equipment and begin that air quality monitoring. And it was critical to us from a safety perspective that when we're putting information out to the public, like we are tonight, that we know exactly what is in the air and how to deliver that message to our community. An inner perimeter was established of 100 yards from the vessel. No detectable readings were found outside of this 100-yard perimeter. That's from the time of the incident to the minute that we stand here right now. No detectable measurement outside 100 yards of the incident location. You'll see here on the next page, CTEH. Some of the gentlemen behind me introduced themselves, the doctors, the toxicologists. They introduced themselves. They came out on scene, and they were contracted to assist in air monitoring. Part of their specialty is contracted services, is doing air monitoring of the immediate area as well as our surrounding communities. We're able to really take good air monitoring measurements, and some of the maps that you see sporadically throughout this room will show a lot of data points on there. It's a key on there, but it shows, and you'll see a lot of the green points, the blue points. Not only did CTEH take air quality monitoring tests, but our OEM hazmat teams also did. And you'll see them from the blue data points as well. We did widespread air monitoring to include the work area within 100 yards of the vessel and the surrounding community and beyond. So essentially, if I break it down for a widespread geographical location, the air monitoring that you see on the data points and beyond is about 400 square miles. Again, I have to reiterate, no measurable results beyond 100 yards from the incident location ever. Air monitoring consisted of targeted and wide area, again, 400 square miles, monitoring by CTEH resources and New Jersey Department of Corrections Special Operations Group. These groups went out and continued to monitor within our community. They hit critical areas. They went to the parking lots of our schools. They went to our roadways, to our areas that many of you may have concerns about. They went out there and collected those data points. And again, zero measurable results. Representatives from Transchem were in contact from the beginning until they could arrive on site. So as this incident unfolds and we develop information about the truck, the driver, and the owner of the transport company, we immediately begin conversation with them, as well as the manufacturer of the chemical inside, which is Lubrizol. SPSI arrived on locations. Again, you heard from Drew earlier. SPSI conducted, after they arrived from ground and air from all over the country, they began assessment and mitigation efforts immediately. You'll see on here the scrubbing of vapors of the affected vessel. Some of you are unfamiliar with that term. I, quite frankly, was unfamiliar with that as well. It's been described to me in layman's terms that vapors that are escaping a vessel are scrubbed through specialized equipment that Drew and his team with SPSI are able to mitigate and remediate right there on scene. That began the second they arrived on scene and has been continuous throughout this effort. Monitoring pressure from inside the vessel. Again, one of the things they did included in the scrubbing of these vapors was consistently and constantly, 24/7, measuring the temperature and the pressure within this tanker vessel. And what we saw is over time, through their mitigation efforts, all of those regulated, the temperature regulated, the pressure regulated, all within safe operations into where we believe that a chemical reaction that was occurring inside was no longer occurring inside. And all that was through their mitigation efforts. The monitoring of the temperatures of chemicals inside the vessel, again, scrubbing the machine for the vapors and the temperature of the line sets cooling the tank. Part of their mitigation efforts were running cold water and water throughout and around that tank so that it could cool the product inside. SPSI, in conjunction with CTEH, continued to monitor the air quality around the vessel. Again, you're going to see a common theme here. We never once stopped monitoring the air quality at the immediate site and beyond it. And we consistently, proactively went to thousands of locations in East Greenwich, beyond East Greenwich, and beyond this county, to include Philadelphia, to monitor air quality post this incident. Crews remained on scene and worked continuously through the night, collecting and scrubbing the vapors coming from this tank. The odor was still being detected by residents. Again, I mentioned this earlier. The odors coming from this tank are odors that are released from the product within the vessel. Some of those odors, to include mercaptans, have very low odor thresholds, which means you can detect them at very minimal levels, levels that are not hazardous, documented to be hazardous to the health of us. No detectable concentrations of mercaptans or H2S, which is hydrogen sulfide, were detected outside of 10 feet of this vessel. And again, I've been saying 100 yards. We detected nothing from the start of this until today, until this moment. Nothing was detected as far as mercaptans and H2S outside of 10 feet of the vessel. Operations throughout the day consisted of vessel scrubbing, vessel cooling, working towards reducing the pressures from within the vessel. We get to Saturday, August 13th. Mitigation efforts from the previous days continued. As they did, wide area air monitoring was continued. As a result of these mitigation efforts, the pressure within the vessel was reduced to allow for the pressure relief valve to be replaced. Again, many of you may have seen in our press release early on, we described what was called a pressure release device. Coming into this incident, I'll be quite honest with you, I had no idea what that is. I'm not an expert on vessels, I'm not an expert on tank trucks, but it was explained to me that that PRD, or pressure release device, is in place for situations where gas could build up or a thermodynamic reaction is occurring within the vessel, and as a fail-safe. And again, we're looking at a tank that, as pressure builds up, you can imagine that if there is not a pressure relief system in place as a fail-safe, this thing could go boom. And that's in layman's terms. It's not technical, but that pressure relief device is in place so that those gases can escape. So when I explained to the public with the information I had at hand that was occurring and that's what should have occurred as a fail-safe on this vessel, it did do what it was supposed to do under those circumstances. As a result of the mitigation efforts, and we described that, the pressure relief valve was to be replaced. Again, some people ask us, why was the pressure release device replaced? I think Drew and his team can explain that in detail, but essentially, I think it's out of an abundance of caution, right? Gases are escaping from this vessel. At some point, we are going to transport this thing down the road or remediate this situation so it is no longer in our township. And we want to make sure that all parts on this vessel, when that happens, are up to par, new, and safe for wherever this is going. We get to Sunday, August 14th, on the screen you're seeing in front of you. The vessel pressures remained stable overnight, and the next steps were initiated. Again, these are all plans of our operations from our EOC. When we sit down as a command staff and unified command, we come up with objectives every day. We discuss those, and we involve all of these key players behind me in those decision making. The core values behind all of those decisions, and the number one priority is the community safety. And that is always a mission from the start of our conversations. We begin to discuss the next step, and that's initiated. And part of that next step is an agitation evaluation. And that process began with maneuvers of the truck within that TA Travel Center secure parking lot. We drove this truck forwards, engaging the brakes. We drove it in reverse, engaging the brakes. We drove several loops around the TA truck stop. Again, we believe a chemical reaction was occurring within the vessel, which caused the emission of the gas from the pressure release device. We believe that based on the temperatures and the pressures we received from the mitigation efforts from SPSI and all the players involved here, that was stable enough to now test it to try and agitate any product within the vessel. We were happy to report that pressures remain stable, temperatures remain stable, in fact, continue to decrease, and that we believe that any chemical or product inside was now stable. These maneuvers were done as an agitation process, again, to reiterate, to see if pressure would build or temperatures would change in the vessel. This was to reaffirm that no additional chemical reactions were occurring and to ensure it would be safe for transport. Throughout the process, pressures in the tank were monitored, along with the temperatures, and air monitoring was performed within the TA Travel Center. If you want to go to the next page, Nick, what you'll see here on this screen, you'll see a lot of wires and cords and tubes hanging from this tank. I certainly, again, am not the expert on what SPSI does or on vessels. However, I can tell you all of those parts on there, many of them are for monitoring and also the scrubbing of vapors from that tanker. So they stayed on there continuously. Were never taken off, and we continue to monitor those pressures and temperatures in its entirety. Get to Monday, August 15th. This is yesterday. We continue air monitoring. Again, when you look at the maps throughout the room in here, when you look at the maps on this presentation, there are thousands and thousands of data points here. Again, I can't belabor this enough. We are getting 0 measurable readings on each air quality test that's being done by CTEH and is being done by our OEM partners. We worked on a safe removal plan for the vessel to be appropriately disposed of. Again, we have a situation in a vessel where there was a product that emitted gas based on a chemical reaction. We now have a product that needs to be removed and taken from its location and properly disposed of. So we have a plan in place for that, and we are working on that, as the mayor kind of discussed earlier. We continue to provide the community and businesses with fact sheets about chemicals and byproducts. Many of you here tonight have a fact sheet in front of you. A lot of that was developed with the partners behind me from CTEH, the doctors, the people that can explain to you the details in the product, the details in the health recommendations, the details on the odors and the process of the scrubbing. And so some of that is in the fact sheet, and a lot of that is based on the public's concerns. We've heard these concerns, we've seen it on social media, through email, and we wanted to directly address that with the professionals that are here behind us tonight so we could get that in your hands. And we got that out through social media a couple days ago. We have call centers that are open. We immediately created a call center through Gloucester County Communications dedicated solely to this incident. Again, 8,200 calls across a few counties. We recognize the fact that we can't inundate our regular call takers with 8,200 calls. We just can't keep up with it. We set up a separate call center for all of our community members, concerned parties, people that wanted to call and say, hey, I smell this odor. What do I do? What about my pets? What about my family, my home, the odor in my car? And I share the same concerns with you. I live in this township. I care about the people here. I have a family here. So certainly your concerns are ones that are in my mind too. But as a number one priority to the safety of this community, we continue to push out real-time information from experts that I believe have the expertise to give you that information. And again, they're here tonight to answer those questions again for all of you. Lastly, if you want to go to that last picture there, Nick, just scroll up. You'll see some data points in here. And again, this is a reiteration of what is hanging on our hallways here, but you'll see all these green data points. You'll also see some blue circles. Those blue circles are also air quality tests that are taken by our OEM partners. The green ones are from CTEH. We've created an overlay. You'll also see some of the red marks there. The red, I don't even know how to describe those icons, but quite frankly, those are the initial calls for service. So what we've done is we've taken some of the things you're seeing on the wall and overlaid them onto one interactive map. So we can see initial calls for service. We can see the blue dots of air quality testing done by our emergency responders. And we can see those green data points by our CTEH partners that are out there actively, even right now, doing air quality tests. Again, thousands upon thousands of tests, real time. The room you're sitting in here today, the building, the parking lot, it's all been created as a data point and has been verified that there are 0 measurable results of any readings whatsoever. And again, That is from day one. I want to mention some of the public outreach that we've done. A big part of our EOC and our conversations daily is how are we getting information out to the public? How are we reaching out to the public that may not have Facebook, may not have a television? What are the things that we are doing actively for that? We are utilizing a system called Everbridge that is through Gloucester County. That's an alert system. For those of you that are signed up for that, it's a free service. You can go to the webpage, sign up for that, and you can get real-time alerts, either text alerts, I believe email as well. And a lot of those were coming out through our alert system through the county. Social media posts. Certainly, and I think many of you can understand this and we can explain this in further detail, but when you are dealing with a situation of this magnitude, and you don't know what is happening as far as the vast, broad range of parties involved, the incident location, and you're trying to gather information about the truck, the vessel, what is happening, evacuation distances. There's not a lot that I can, as the chief of police, put out responsibly until I know some of that information. But once we had that information and we had the appropriate parties here and the experts that were able to explain, how does this vessel work? Where is it going to? What are the health concerns? How can we address that with the public? We immediately began posting through the Gloucester County OEM Facebook pages, Twitter pages, through Gloucester County immediately, on the hour, every hour. And a lot of our constituents would share that information. We set up multiple press conferences. I'll be the first to tell you, with the mayor, with Jack, who spoke earlier, we were very quick to say before nighttime hours shot out, we need to get across the street and speak to the press. Again, my number one task, evaluate what we have, contain what we have, and get the information I have at hand out to our community. Is there a risk? Is there a concern? What do they need to know? And simply, we walked across the street and immediately began speaking to the press, some of which are here tonight, and got out the information that I had at hand. We set up what's called a JIC, or a Joint Information Center. That Joint Information Center was over at Shady Lane in Clarksboro, and we set up 2 more press conferences. Again, as information unfolded, as the transport company arrived on scene, as conversations developed with Lubrizol, as conversations developed on mitigation and remediation efforts, we decided we needed to get that updated information out. And we did. Again, as we spoke about earlier, we set up a call center at Gloucester County. We tapped into our Gloucester County Meals on Wheels program. Approximately 600 senior citizens get that fact sheet in their hands, get that delivered to our seniors. They may not be on the TV. They may not be on social media. How can we reach that community that may not have access to certain things that many of us utilize every single day? Our community emergency response team, we have some certain members locally here and abroad throughout the county that we tapped into to say, hey, I need you to go door to door. There's some businesses here in town that may not have gotten the word or the information or the fact sheet. Maybe they're too busy running an operation or a business to notice the Facebook pages. Get out in front of it, speak to them. Try to advise them. There's a hotline set up. There's a call center set up. If you need to make a claim for whatever reason, that is set up as well. And here's how you do it. Here's the resources for it. We tapped into our prosecutor's office chaplains program. Again, for communities that may be underserved and may not have some of the resources that everybody has. I want to tap into our stakeholders in the community that know their communities, know their people, and know how to get them information in their hand so that they're continued to be safe. Our Gloucester County NAACP, who we have a great relationship with, we've provided all that information to. Our blind and visually impaired communities, we've tapped into them so they can get this information. Our community long-term care facilities, our senior citizens, folks that are concerned about HVAC concerns. There's an odor in my HVAC, there's an odor in my home. How do I remediate that, and am I safe? And again, all of those questions can be answered here tonight if they're not answered through the fact sheet or through this presentation. But again, this is information that we continue every single day to get into the hands of the people that need it. Again, I said it before, as a chief of police here in East Greenwich, my number one priority is the safety of all residents here. I want you to live and be happy in this town and feel safe. I want to feel that way. I want my family to feel that way. This incident, I'm confident, And I'm extremely impressed by the services that came together to address this incident and the professionalism and the resources that they brought to the table to really address this. And I'm confident today, if you have questions or concerns, they will be able to address those and answer them for you. Okay, that concludes the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. We will now begin the question and answer portion of tonight's town hall. As a reminder for those in attendance, please submit any questions that you may have on the index cards that were provided. There's individuals going around that will collect those index cards. For those online, please submit your questions through the chat. I will read the questions that are presented to the panelists. I do ask that the panelists speak into the microphone so that we can all hear the answers. I will now begin with the first question. First question is for the police chief. Initially, there was conflicting information being provided to the public. Example, natural gas leak, truck venting, and description of the odor. Can you comment on why this may have occurred?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure some of you are sick of hearing from me already, but you know, I kind of alluded to it earlier, right? This is a situation that is vast. It's broad. There's a lot of elements to it. There's a hazmat factor, there's a location factor, an environmental factor, and certainly some of the things that we balance from a public safety standpoint is, am I containing and addressing any kind of threat to my community versus the balance of getting information into the ears and the hands of our community members. And so I alluded to this earlier, spoke on it. We spoke to the press across the street in the gas station lot. I took the information that we had in hand from a well-developed idea of how a vessel works, what may be inside, the probability of what is inside, and what you're seeing and smelling as a community and what we were seeing and smelling there. We put some of that information out through the press under the expert advice at the time that nobody was at risk at the time. And again, we were doing odor, or we were doing air quality monitoring at the time, and a lot of what was put out of there was based on that. I know there was some confusion on, you know, some folks said that it was put out that it was a natural gas leak. There was a comparison, and again, I'm big on ownership. I'll own that. I did own the fact that, you know, I did compare the odor to that of a natural gas emission, in that the same elements in natural gas are also added to this product, and they're called mercaptans. And I describe that as a rotten egg smell. It's described like that by others. The perception of your nose may be different than mine. Some describe it as burnt petroleum. I described it as that. But essentially, when natural gas leaks in your home, you smell that pungent odor, that maybe rotten egg odor, as a fail-safe to let you know something is going on before there's a problem. And so my description of that, if it didn't quite meet the level of the exact odoriferous definition, my apologies for that. Again, essentially, I'm getting the information out as quick as possible based on the information we had at hand.
Thank you. The next question is also for the police chief. Was the information on the nature of the contents immediately provided to emergency personnel?
Yeah, so I spoke with fire representative here as well on this question, and essentially we described earlier the police response. We got a lot of calls from all over the area. It was difficult for a few minutes to originate and really pinpoint the location of a gas being expelled and where that was coming from. When we finally located that, our officers were able to locate this tanker truck, provide identifiers to our county communication center to include you know, state and tag numbers as well as placard numbers. And I have to say that although we were able to provide those descriptors, again, it would be irresponsible for me to put out there exactly what is in a vessel without me physically looking at the SDS sheets and the shipping papers that are actually in the truck. So it wasn't until we were able to make entry into that truck, as a truck driver was not on location immediately, it was important for us to get that before I could officially put out what exactly was in this tank vessel.
The next question is for Gloucester County, also Emergency Management. How are residents notified of the incident? Besides Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, what other notification platforms are available? What platforms are available for the residents to subscribe to, and how would they sign up?
So sure, we do have several social media outlets that we do have out there to include Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, that you can kind of like and follow. We also additionally have what we refer to as Everbridge. It's our mass notification system that we have within the county. That is a registered prescription that you need to go on, log yourself on, whatever device you want to receive text messages on, emails on, and or get a voice message on. So there's a couple different ways we can send that to you. To register for that, go into the Gloucester County webpage itself. At the bottom of the link, subscribe for emergencies. You can follow the link and you can register for that. You yourself get to choose what kind of alerts you want to receive. So whether your kids go to school and you want to get alerts on that particular school, you can receive that. If you travel Route 55 or 295 every morning, you want to get alerts on those individual roadways, you're able to get alerts on those. So this does all kinds of different alert mechanisms that you can subscribe for. In the event of a true emergency, life-threatening emergency, just like an Amber Alert, that's referred to as iPods. We too also have the capability of iPods. So if this was a true emergency, so if that shelter advisory was a shelter-in-place order by the county, we would have hit a iPod message out, which then inferred would have taken over your phones, your TVs if it was on, and it would have given you that alert telling you what to do during that effect. The fact that it was only advisory, we're not able to hit that on an iPod message.
The next question is also for Gloucester County Office of Emergency Management. How is the community prepared for incidents of this scale or larger?
Every municipality within Gloucester County has a local emergency management coordinator. Every local municipality has to have an emergency operation plan, and in tune, the county also has an emergency operation plan. Those plans get enacted during any type of emergency. So earlier in the day, we were testing some of our plans with some of the active shooter drills that have been going on within the school system since the schools have been out. So it's not just a truck emergency, it's any kind of emergency to include the tornado that we recently had. Any types of emergencies we kind of practice and prepare for, and we incorporate our local partners every single time to include our state partners as well.
Also, another question for Gloucester County Office of Emergency Management. Can you speak to when air monitoring started and who was initially involved? What types of readings did you observe?
Sure. So the initial first metering would take place as soon as the fire department arrived on location. Every fire department does have meters. They're able to do some meter monitoring when they get there. They are a little bit limited, and the Gloucester County Hazmat team does have a little bit more sophisticated equipment to read different materials, different levels, etc. So we were downrange, and I mean by we. In this circumstances, I personally made a downrange assessment along with Nelson. We actually made that initial downrange assessment for the hazmat team. So at 4:38 to be exact, Nelson and I made an entry into that environment to do some, we had different missions going down there, but one was the air monitor mission. So we were conducting air monitoring from that point in time to include the hydrogen sulfide, VOCs, running down to those patterns that we were looking for. We were testing for those right then and there. From that point in time, the hydrogen sulfide, we did not get any readings past 10 feet from that vessel of that H2S. And from the VOC standpoint, 100 yards from the vehicle, we were not receiving any VOCs. Once we established that, we put up what they refer to as area arrays. We kind of drop them, leave them on the ground, and we continue to do air monitoring the entire time. They come back into the computer system that we can monitor those from a command post. Once those are set up, that air monitoring has been set up and in place from that time. So as soon as the fire department got there and when the hazmat teams that assisted with us arrived, that air monitor was being done around the clock since that time frame.
All right, the next question is from New Jersey's Department of Environmental Protection. When did you arrive on location and what actions did you take?
Thanks, Greg. So in conjunction with what Jack was just talking about, we received, started getting calls a little after 3 up at DEP and, Gloucester County OEM, we staffed to us about 3:30, asked for support on scene. Our support would be to help embellish the air monitoring as one of the missions. So we got on scene about 5:30. We had staff on scene about 5:30. We joined Gloucester County OEM and the other responders and helped establish a robust air monitoring program. In the beginning was we brought the capability to do mobile air monitoring and again, joined forces with Gloucester County in the fire department. Understanding the situation, once we got down on scene, we made a decision to, in conjunction with Gloucester County OEM, to reach out to our federal partners, EPA. We request EPA to respond to help us in the bigger picture, look at the rest of the site in the community with air monitoring. EPA was down on scene the following day. I guess that would be August 11th. They were on scene about 4:30 in the morning. We established area raids around the facility and within the community to help get a better picture of what was, if anything, being found with the air monitoring. So that covers our first response efforts. We've been participating in Unified Command and providing support as we need it.
Thank you. The next question is for Transkin. In your experience, has this type of incident ever occurred before?
So before I answer that question, and it is a good question, I want to take just a minute to thank the mayor, all the first responders, you know, and I want to say that we understand the impact that we have had on your community. And from the get-go, since we have first were notified, and I talked to a Chief Halter over the phone initially, our goal has been to, number one, get this taken care of as far as getting rid of the situation and to do it as quickly and safely as possible. And I just wanted to take a minute to thank all these guys. They have done an excellent, outstanding job. Okay. To answer the question bluntly, no, we have never had something like this happen.
Another question for Transkin. The chemical name was changed a few times throughout the incident. Can you explain why this occurred?
I think that was just simply misreporting. The chemical name, they have a couple of different chemicals. Yeah, and they say it's Lubrizol this, Lubrizol that with numbers. And I just think it was simply just a misreporting. I don't think there was anything other than that.
Next question for Transkin. Can you speak to what paperwork the truck driver is required to have? And did the driver have the proper paperwork?
So yes, the paperwork that the driver is required to have for a hazmat load or a hazardous material shipment, that is prepared by the shipper when it is offered for us. The driver did have that paperwork, and from what I have seen, it is the correct paperwork.
The next question also for Transkin. Was the tanker properly labeled and placarded?
So yes, again, that is governed by DOT and PHMSA regulations, DOT under 49 CFR. I apologize. If you can't tell, I'm not from here. So yeah, under 49 CFR, which is the part of the regulations that handles hazmat, we did have it placarded correctly.
Next question is also for Transkin. Can you explain the claims process, where you can get information, types of claims, and timeline?
Sure. So, you know, as I said before, you know, we understand the impact we've had. We have set up not only 800 number for all of your health questions through CPEH. We also set up an 800 number for the claims process. In addition to that, over at 141 Berkeley Road, and that became operational today. We set up an in-person center for both of those as well. There's two buildings there. One, two modular buildings. You go into one, you can get your health questions answered. The other one, you can get the information for processing of the claim. So we've done that. If you feel you have a claim, I encourage you to call the 800 number that's been passed around. And forgive me, I'm terrible with numbers, so I don't have that. Or go to 141 Berkeley Road and they'll get your information there.
Right, the next question is for CTEH. The CDC and other health and hazard data sheets identify mercaptan as a toxic gas. Can you explain why it has been described as just a nuisance odor?
Yeah, so before I explain it, I think I could, kind of skip everyone, 26 years in school and, get you to the end. And I wish I knew this going in. When it comes to toxicology, 5 words explain everything you need to know. The dose makes the poison. If you drink enough water in a short amount of time, it will have a hazardous, sometimes an infectious, lethal effect on you. Same thing with aspirin. Biologically and logically on the other end of the spectrum, you can be exposed to a very hazardous substance, a very smelly substance at such a low concentration that it will be safe. The weird thing with methylmercaptan as well as hydrogen sulfide is our noses are very bad at determining the concentration, the dose of how much is in the air. We can detect these chemicals at the part per billion level. The dose in the air that we're able to detect says nothing about the toxicology that we review, me and Dr. Malm, when making statements and recommendations for unified command into what they represent to you as the public. You guys all smelled something. I know that. I smelled something. I got the call at 1:30 in the morning in Arkansas. We had somebody here on site, 4:30 Eastern. On Friday, we sent one other person so we could start doing 24/7 monitoring around the facility. On Friday evening, 25 people, including myself and Dr. Mall, came here. The first thing I did Friday night was go to the site so I could see what it smelled like, so I could get eyes on the situation. And we didn't detect anything in our instruments, but we did detect something in our noses. I mention instruments because while our instruments are not as sensitive as our noses, our instruments are very, very good at detecting the concentration or dose in the air. It is not our noses that we use to make conclusions about your public health. It is these instruments right here. This instrument can detect hydrogen sulfide, and this gas tech instrument can detect methylmercaptan. These tubes are made in Japan, so they're really good, really awesome, and they can detect methylmercaptan down to less than 0.1 parts per million. This can detect hydrogen sulfide down to less than 0.1 parts per million. Like I said, we've been canvassing the community. We've had 7,000 readings throughout 400 square miles. When we deploy these area arrays that have been mentioned, since day one, those have been deployed, taking 16 measurements per second every single day since today. I'll do the math for you. We've had 300,000 readings and growing around the facility in order for us to know immediately if something changes. We may be able to smell something, but we really need to determine how much is in the air in order for us to deploy mitigating factors and inform people. Since we've been here, we've all said there's been no detectable concentrations. There's been odorous concentrations that we as humans are able to detect, but our instruments can tell us what's safe, and that's what we talk about when we determine, that something that may be hazardous at a low enough dose, which our instruments can tell us it's a low enough dose, are tens to hundreds to tens of thousands of times lower than air concentrations that would be associated with long-term adverse health effects. So the air is safe to breathe, even though it used to be really stinky. I think it's getting better.
All right, the next question also for CTH. How can something be considered harmless when it causes vomiting, headache, nausea, loss of sense of smell, sore throat, or aggravates allergies?
So again, this kind of goes back to the odor threshold component, although we're saying that it has no adverse health effects. The nausea that we feel with methylmercaptan and hydrogen sulfide is exactly the same as you feel when your grandma puts on too much perfume, you smell some rotting food. These are physiological responses to the odor itself, and they have no bearing on any sort of toxicological mechanism for these compounds. These are short-term events. They do not have long-term ramifications. And typically, if you experience these symptoms, you're not experiencing a toxic effect of the chemical. I mean, you hear, a word like zinc dialkyl dithiiophosphate, you hear methylmercaptan, you hear sulfur dioxide, it sounds scary. You smell something, you live 20 miles away. Of course, I mean, I would be scared too. But at the same time, that really all that matters is the dose. And I lost myself when I was trying to remember the name of that scary chemical. I forgot what the question is, but ultimately my answer is going to be it relates to the dose. The dose is what matters here.
Also for CPH, can you explain what is being measured during air quality monitoring?
So I think I mentioned that we were measuring methylmercaptan in the air, and we're measuring hydrogen sulfide. These are the odorous byproducts that are associated with the incident, and those are primarily what we typically measure in these responses. In the last year, CTH has assisted with 3 similar events, just like this. So that's why we were able to deploy immediately with somebody out of our New Jersey office to know exactly what they need to monitor for, and those are the 2 analytes that we're monitoring for, methylmercaptan and hydrogen sulfide.
For CPH, what are the known long-term effects of this chemical? Has there been any studies conducted, and what is the exposure limit?
Neither methylmercaptan nor hydrogen sulfide are a known human carcinogen. There are no long-term effects for these chemicals, especially at concentrations that you could smell them at. When you talk about exposure limits, that's typically in the context of an occupational exposure, like OSHA type thing, as permissible exposure levels. These are safe levels. So, when people think exposure limits, this isn't a threshold. These are safe levels. The OSHA pelt for both methylmercaptan and hydrogen sulfide are thousands of times higher than what you can smell. That, again, goes to the point that smelling these things doesn't mean that necessarily there's any hazard to be had. And these OSHA permissible exposure limits, by the way, at 10 ppm, which is thousands of times higher than what you can smell, these are safe exposures for a working lifetime. So this isn't just a one-time and it's over. I will also just reiterate, these are not human carcinogens.
Thing I do want to add to that, you talked about the OSHA level of 10 parts per million. We used the NIOSH guidelines for this. We were using 0.5 would have been our action level, right? So again, just to show you how non-detect these were, no levels ever left that compound. That's how reassuring we are on that.
Question for CTH. Are there any medical tests, for example, blood tests for determining the amount of exposure?
So we looked into medical tests. There are not standard medical blood panels that you can get from your doctor. Like if you were to go in, get a blood draw and have your white blood cells assessed. To see if there were any specialty blood tests available, we rely on these documents called the Medical Management Guidelines that are produced by a branch of the CDC called the Agency for Toxic Substances and Disease Registry. It's a long, complicated name that I hate saying. Sorry about that. But yeah, so we looked into it, and hydrogen sulfide and mercaptans can be measured in your blood. But one of the things that for both chemical PATSBR says is that the blood concentrations that you see don't correlate well with external exposures, and the information that you can get out of it isn't useful for making medical decisions. So in general, they don't recommend trying to get blood tests for either of these chemicals.
Can you address the risk of air in basements and structures below grade, and that's for CPA.
So both methyl mercaptan and hydrogen sulfide are gases at room temperature. And so we'd expect them to continue to dissipate over time. They can hang towards the air and so, or hang towards the ground. And so you might still notice lingering odors in your basement longer than other parts of your house. And so one of the important things to do will be to try to improve ventilation as well as you can. It's important to note that if the concentration or the concentrations of our detecting limits of our instruments, since we haven't gotten detections out in the community, it would indicate that vapors aren't going to concentrate in your basement to a level that might harm you. So the vapor density might mean that the odor hangs around longer and it's unpleasant in your basement, but there's not extra amounts of chemical hanging out in low grade areas. Yeah, if you notice odors in your basement, improving ventilation is one of the best things you can do.
Question for CPH. Are there any long-term impact to people or animals?
No. It is not a known human carcinogen. There are only acute effects associated with both methyl mercaptan and hydrogen sulfide. And those are, again, tens of thousands of times higher than anything we can smell. And we know that they're less than 0.1 on all of our instruments. I looked into animals and also Bob with the DEP here graciously put us in touch with the Department of Agriculture. And so perusing the literature and consulting the Department of Agriculture, the levels that we're seeing on the community should be protective against livestock and pets and wildlife as well.
Next question, also for CPA. Should there be any concerns with soil contamination? Are there any concerns for local farmers?
No, for a similar reason about the ventilation is that both of these things are gases at room temperature. And so, especially during the day when the sun's beating down on it, they'll disperse naturally. They shouldn't be, they won't deposit on surfaces like crops or anything like that. And they don't partition well in the soil. If you find any of these things in soil, they tend to release out if you disturb it. So, no, we don't expect any impact to soil health or to crops.
Question for CPH. What recommendations can be provided for proper cleaning of my house, outside belongings and vehicles?
So this is another thing we tried to dig into. There are not really any prescribed treatment options for residential settings. But one of the most useful resources we came across, like the Chief mentioned earlier, mercaptan is one of the things that's added to natural gas in order to make it smell bad and give you a warning property in case you have a gas leak. So one of the things that has resulted in is that if someone has had a gas leak in the past, they leave, the gas company comes in and fixes the problem. They often come home to a house that smells like mercaptan because they had that odor deposited into the home. And so some of the useful things that people have found to mitigate that odor, other than just ventilation and time, would be for bleach-safe surfaces, you can use a disinfectant concentration of bleach that's 5 to 9%. Other people have reported using baking soda for fabrics, so blankets, curtains, clothing, if you want to try to speed up the process. And vinegar might also be an option. I'd encourage everybody to make sure that if you're going to choose a cleaning product, make sure that it's appropriate for the surface you plan on cleaning. Don't want anyone damaging the value. And yet, Drew's reminded me, please don't mix cleaning chemicals either.
The next question is also for CPA. Could you just let the audience know who your company is?
So CTEH is a third-party environmental health consulting firm. We have PhD toxicologists, environmental scientists, health scientists working around the clock to respond to emergencies to the environment. And this is our day job. It's exciting. It helps bring kind of order to the chaos. We're used to this. Like I said, this is my third similar response in 1 year. And, you know, we kind of help serve as a source of information for unified command to, you know, share our years of expertise doing this and also offer our understanding of the scientific literature and make sure that the public remains informed in ways that they can understand and not just watch the news and listen to these long chemicals and, you know, smell these ugly, dirty smells and, you know, not really have, you know, just feel fear. And we're just here to kind of help you understand the science and the chemicals in the ways that we understand it and help Unified Command make these recommendations and, you know, make you feel safe and inform you when you are sick.
At this time, we have 15 minutes remaining in the public questions. I will try to get through as many questions as I can in that remaining time. Next question is for Transchem. Do we know how this happened? And how do we know more hazardous chemicals will not be released from the tanker into our neighborhood?
So do not exactly know how this happened. We're still investigating that part, okay? We do have some theories. One of those is that the product got overheated, okay? We're trying to run that to ground to make sure we're correct in that theory. And I can't speak to the dangers to follow. I know Drew is working on that. I'm confident, I'm no expert, but I am confident that we're getting closer to the end. If I wasn't confident, I wouldn't have got in that truck Sunday and shook it up a little bit. So, but I can let Drew speak to where we're at on that.
Yeah, so again, the investigation is still in progress with the investigators, but everything that's happened does track with an overheating event that triggered a decomposition of the product. And that reacting vapor, pressure buildup, everything y'all experienced in the community, pretty much under control Thursday evening after we were able to get those hot gases out of that trailer through the scrubbing system. And we've progressively managed that ever since. And we're daily getting milestones of confidence and assurance that has suspended days ago. And we're just being very, very cautious and very, very certain that it will not cause a problem the moment it leaves that truck stop.
As a follow-up question to that, do we know when the tanker will be removed?
So that's something we're working through and we appreciate everyone's patience. I know everyone wants it out of their backyard and in the coming days, we hope to have that accomplished.
Next question is for Transchem. If this is not considered dangerous, why are there insurance representatives on it?
So as with any event of this magnitude, we notified our insurance company. We felt it prudent that if anyone felt they had a claim, that we give them an avenue to pursue that claim.
Question for CTEH. Has air quality ever been measured indoors where air flows much less freely than outside, such as concentrations would rise and be trapped indoors?
Yes, air monitoring has been measured indoors as it relates to every single CTEH response that we respond to. Chemicals, depending on their nature, may or may not concentrate inside. We have not measured indoor air concentrations that are detectable in association with this or any other similar event. Air concentrations, again, here, you may be able to smell them, but they, again, are below the detection limits of our instruments. And therefore, we're confident to say that even though you can smell the air in your house, it is thousands of times safer than any other, any concentration that would be associated with any adverse health effect.
Another question for CPEH. I know they deem generally limited risk of inhaling the gas, smell, or pathogens, but what about those that are at higher risk?
So typically, when we as toxicologists and regulators interpret the scientific literature and make recommendations for, public consumption and, to appease the public and make sure that they understand that, what we're trying to say is to make them feel better. In short, when we interpret the scientific literature, we assume we're talking about the young, elderly, and sensitive subpopulation. When I say we're safe, I'm not saying a healthy worker is safe. I'm saying an old, sensitive subpopulation is safe. We don't make recommendations that apply to one set of individuals and not another. We consider the most sensitive individuals when making these recommendations. So pregnant women, sensitive subpopulations, and young and elderly, they're all considered when I'm making these statements about hydrogen sulfide, methyl mercaptan, and any chemical compound that CTH responds to.
Question for Transchem. Was the truck venting system in working order?
So yes, the PRD that the chief talked about, it operated exactly as designed. So, and I know there was some, wondering why we changed that. During that decomposition process, that got kind of heated up. And just like Chief said, out of abundance of caution, we wanted to make sure before we take that tank out of here that it is roadworthy and safe for all the communities that it's going to go through.
Another question for Transchem. Does the truck have some type of mechanism that should or would alert the driver of pressure buildup that may have possibly led to the release of whatever chemical was being carried prior to something like this happening?
So there's currently no technology that I'm aware of that does that. We rely on a good old fashioned air pressure.
Question for CPEH. How long does hydrogen sulfide stay in the atmosphere after a release of this sort?
Not sure that a good answer for you. In the atmosphere all around us, I haven't been able to detect odors around anymore. We don't have instrumentation that can detect it either. So, yeah, I think in outdoor air, we haven't been able to find it since we've been out monitoring. So I think it's more or less passed on. It's something it's also important to remember is both methyl mercaptan and hydrogen sulfide are natural substances. I had a conversation with the mayor the other day about these natural substances, and I reminded him that if we've ever eaten asparagus, you forget about it a little bit and you go to the restroom later, you're smelling methyl mercaptan. So these are natural substances, and they do dissipate in air like all vapors, but again, it will never be zero for either compound or any compound ever. So really, the dose is what matters. So we've been unable to detect them at concentrations. So they're essentially, nothing that is impacting your health.
Next question for CPH. Can you 100% ensure there are no long-term life-threatening issues?
So, as toxicologists, we are a science-based consulting firm. There is nowhere in the scientific literature where anyone can point to determine that there are long-term health effects associated with exposures to methyl mercaptan or hydrogen sulfide at levels that you can detect them with your nose, but you cannot detect them with your instruments. And yes, I can say that with 100% confidence, certainty.
This question also for CPH. Is our water at risk, pool water, groundwater, shower water, tap water, city water?
So, no, it should not be. Similar to soil, the two chemicals don't remain in solution very long. Hydrogen sulfide doesn't like to stay in water, and neither does methylmercaptan. So if you were to try to capture some of that gas and mix it up in water, as soon as you took the cap off of the container that you had it on, it would start off-gassing again. So no, we don't expect any impact to standing water sources.
Question for Transchem. Are there any steps being taken to prevent this in the future?
So as with any incident of any type that we have, you know, the tank truck industry is notoriously the safest segment in the transportation industry. And whenever we have an event like this, when everything has settled down and we've gotten all the information, we will do what we call a root cause analysis to see what went wrong and what can we do to make sure that it doesn't happen. So we will do everything possible to ensure that.
This question is for CPH. How many houses, basements have been monitored, tested? How many tested over threshold of safe amount? And what was the max parts per million?
All CPH readings associated with this response have been the same. Non-detectable, less than 0.1 part per million for hydrogen sulfide, less than 0.1 part per million for methylmercaptan.
Next question is for Transchem. What was the product reacting with, and what does the product become? Has that been determined?
So once again, we're still trying to figure out exactly what caused that. I am not a chemist, so I can't say what it has become. But like I said, once again, we're still, you know, we're investigating to see what caused it.
This question would be for CTEH. If the readings are 0, how do we smell it?
The readings are not 0. The readings are somewhere less than 0.1 part per million. But our noses are able to detect these concentrations of methylmercaptan and hydrogen sulfide at 1 part per billion, which is 0.0001 part per million. But again, like I said, our noses are unable to determine quantification of how much is in the air, more so than it's present. The presence of an odor via, our noses is not relevant for clinical toxicology. What is relevant is the actual numerical concentration in the air. We can smell it because our noses just evolved to smell these compounds at very, very low concentration.
Question would be for Walter County Management. What was the initial concentration of H2S?
It all depends on where you're at the incident scene. So directly up on top, so up the ladder, right at the threshold of where this was venting off, it was 100 parts per million. As we come down the ladder from up top on the truck, as we move down away from that, we dropped down to about 50 parts per million on that. As I walked down range and kind of towards the in direction where the wind was blowing to, no more from 10 feet from the vessel itself, I was down to 0 parts per million. So H2S never left anywhere 10 feet from that vessel.
This question would be directed towards the police chief or the fire chief. What type of personal protective equipment is worn for this type of incident?
The initial downrange assessment that Jack and I we did instructional firefighting gear with SCBA, which was deemed to be appropriate for the initial assessment for that area.
The next question is for CPA. Who is paying, for your services?
Yeah, so, I mean, as any time when Unified Command is stood up, the responsible party is the one that is ultimately in charge for paying for all services, including, all those incurred by local police force and, federal and local authorities as well, CTH included. I paused for a moment because we were initially hired by a emergency management company that
Yes,
is
so
contracted by Trans.
just to-
So they contacted them to contact us.
So to give you the quick, so as soon as I was notified, we have a general contractor that we use. Whenever we have an event like this or, a spill or whatever, we engage them. They in turn know who to call in the area that can respond the quickest. CTH was one of those calls, as well as Drew.
This question is for Transcam. So the truck and equipment, so was the truck and equipment defective?
Absolutely not. It worked absolutely as designed.
And as a follow-up to that question, if it was not dangerous, why wasn't the truck sent back where it came from? Thereby dispatching the release over many miles instead of leaving it sit in the community.
So, one, the driver wasn't aware that there was a thermal reaction going on in the tank. He had been instructed to park there. He was in the process of delivering. When he went to deliver, he was not on their schedule, so they turned him away. At that point, he was instructed to go to the truck stop. That was at about 10 a.m. in the morning. And here we are. Once that started, that reaction, it's no longer safe to move the vessel.
That ends the public questions. At this time, we will open it up to the media for questions. Is there anybody from the media that would like? We ask that you come forward.
What we're gonna do is we will conclude, we will let folks exit the courtroom, and then the panel will stay up here and we will allow the media to come forward to answer some questions. So first and foremost, just want to interrupt. I want to just thank everyone for coming out here this evening. We have gone through all those questions. Most importantly, please understand and hear me. The hotline is continuously open. So if you have additional environmental health questions, please call 856-807-5388. That information is on the Gloucester County Office of Emergency social media pages. If you have an insurance claim, if you have a question about an insurance claim, if you have a question in regards if you think you have an insurance claim, please call 1-855-476-7817. Again, that information is on the Gloucester County Office of Emergency Management social media pages, Facebook, Twitter, all the above. We want to thank everyone for being here tonight.
On-site location.
Oh, I apologize. We also have an on-site location. So local residents in front of the Berkeley Square liquor store. It is in the parking lot of Grill Billy's. It is 141 Berkeley Road, Clarksburg, New Jersey. The facility is there. It is a trailer. There is also a sign outside that will be able to direct you to there. There is an officer there that will direct you. You go inside, if you have, again, a health concern, if you have any kind of an issue that you want to discuss with the professionals, the toxicologists themselves, CTH, you will be able to reach them there. via phone or in person. If you have an insurance claim where you want to speak to somebody directly, a lot of us like to talk face to face. Take advantage of the opportunity. They will be there. Even after this truck is gone, Transcom will be still here on site and controlling and making sure that that message is out there. I cannot stress enough to make sure you're getting your social media understanding from the Gloucester County Office of Emergency Management. Unfortunately, somehow or another, a lot of folks apparently slept at a Holiday Inn the night before and have a lot of information and expertise in regards to Scientology that comes along with a lot of what's going on social media. It's important that you're getting the information directly from us. So again, the Office of Emergency Management in Gloucester County, please focus your attention there. We thank you for coming in tonight. We've gone through all the questions at this point in time. We are going to go ahead and let you disperse out of the courtroom. The media will then come up forward and we'll be able to address the media from there. Thank you all for coming. Have a good evening. Thank you.